about the human experience, and we continue speaking about the human experience today. And I think throughout time, especially modern time, for many people, success has been measured by demanding careers, high-paying jobs, corner offices, promotions, packed schedules, and the constant pressure of keeping to achieve more. And high pressure jobs can bring that status, right? That financial security and also a sense of accomplishment in society. But there's also something different taking place. It seems like we have a reversal theme happening today, because a lot of people now are choosing to step away. They're leaving behind the pressure, the long hours, and the relentless pace to focus on what truly matters to them, whether it's pursuing their passion, exploring new paths, moving to quieter spaces, or simply just taking time to rest. So what does it take to make that leap? And what comes next after you leave that high-pressure corporate job when well-being and purpose starts to take priority? We're speaking to one such individual today by the name of Phumeza Mxaku, who has worked in senior planning and strategy roles in big companies across South Africa, like the BMW South Africa Group, for example. So yeah, big hoity-toity jobs, and has strong experience in corporate leadership. But recently, she's decided to leave her senior role and is now figuring out her next room. Phumeza, thank you so much for joining us. Phumeza Mxaku is a planning and strategy executive, former electromobility manager at BMW South Africa, who is now just in a path of her own becoming. Phumeza, it's a pleasure to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much. I hope you're doing great as well. This is a big decision. It actually sounds so scary. And I'm thinking about it because this is a scary move from a lot of people. You're pretty much moving away from what society deems to be what measures success.
That is true. That is true.
So why?
Look, I have been in the corporate space holistically for 18 years, right? In the many conversations I've had prior to taking this change and after I'd taken this change, I call this sort of the halfway mark. I'm of the view that a person's career spans about 40 years, right? And the halfway mark is either at 20 or closer to 20 years of that.
Okay.
And, you know, I was in a position where I somewhat reached my roof within the organization as it stood, but also I had digressed somewhat in what I had imagined my career development would be some 10 or so years ago.
I see. So tell me about the moment of making this decision. I mean, you know, when you hear people, you know, a conversation like that, people are saying, I would die to be Phumeza. Why would she do something that so many people, especially in a country like South Africa, would literally give an arm and a leg to be in that position? What is that moment for you that said, yeah, it's time for me to step away?
I'll be honest, I don't think it's just a moment. Prior to making the decision, I'd taken months, right? So perhaps the moment comes in the nudging. There comes a moment of nudging that nudges you, that says you are no longer aligned with your aspirational goals. You are not operating in what you had intended for yourself, right? But you take time to evaluate that. So you don't wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm leaving this career and I will do so this month.
Yeah.
And so it takes time. It took me close to a year even, if not more. So I'd started pre-evaluating. I'd started looking at what would this career pivot look like? What would I need to make this career pivot from a resource perspective? Because you must be pragmatic, right, about the move. You can't just up and move without general resources. Can I survive in whatever rest period that I think I require? And what would I need to do that? So I took quite a bit of time. And I think it's important to do that. I think it's important that when you make this decision, it's not an impulsive, emotional decision, because part of the reason you work is that you like your job, yes, most likely. But also you want to earn money to earn a living, your livelihood. So you have to be realistic about the impact to your livelihood. And that takes time. So no, it wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a well thought out decision to step away, to review and recharge.
How have you been approaching this particular period? I mean, of around a year, as you said, to reflect and figure out what your own next move is going to be?
It takes a number of things. Again, you have to ensure groundedness in making the decision. Corporate spaces can be very pressured in the role itself, in the environment. There are a number of things that would, let's say, push you towards leaving. But you always need to ensure you are not leaving because of external factors. Right? You are not stepping away from this purely because it's gotten too pressured, it's gotten too uncomfortable, and you simply just cannot do it anymore. You also need to understand, is this something I would really like to do? Is it something I can commit to? I think it's a commitment in itself, right? The decision. It's a commitment in itself because it has so many repercussions. And so you need to think about, okay, this time off, what does it entail? What would I need in terms of resources? How can I go about pre-planning these resources, putting things in place? And then have conversations with people around you. You likely have a network of either like-minded individuals, mentors, family, etc., right? Engage these people, see their thoughts. The decision is still yours to make, right? But you just want to be cognizant of your environment holistically when you make the decision. So you want to ensure that, no, I'm not being impulsive. No, I'm not just doing this as an emotional, move. I really have thought about it. I really do think of the potential repercussions, and I've really tried as best possible to plan ahead how I would then accommodate those potential repercussions.
Look, Phumeza, in the society that we all live in, it's common for many of us to identify ourselves and our self-worth and attach it to what we do. Us climbing the ladder, us, doing better, us making X amount of money. How have you dealt with, I guess, that bit of it, that identity aspect of yourself towards your job, and now having to think about it, over the past year, about yourself outside of that space and that identity with the work that you do?
You know what I think I've known reasonably about myself over the years, but one that I've become very comfortable with, I think, over the past few months where I've stepped away, is that, yes, the job had the title. Yes, the organization had the title, the benefits, etc., even the visibility, perhaps, the alignment to the particular brand. But the person who achieved it, who got there, that was Phumeza, right? That was whether with the resources of the environment or without, it's still innately Phumeza, right? So I am capable of being that person independent of the environment. I'm capable of being that person in a way that I can define for myself, in a way that I view to align better with the way I'd envisaged, my career to develop. So it's internal. There's a lot of internal validation that you must do. A lot. And it's very important. And in fact, if I had to say it, you shouldn't need to step away to do that validation, right? In fact, your very survival in a corporate space, in a corporate environment, requires you to do, let's say, small step backs and internally validate that you are brilliant, you're amazing, you are worth it, you've achieved great things. I had another conversation and someone said to me, oh my goodness. And someone said to me, instead of a vision board, you know how people do vision boards for their future aspirations. Instead of a vision board, create one that displays all your past achievements.
Wow.
A visual of the things you've achieved in your career, for instance, and whatever spaces that you are impactful in. And remind yourself that it was you that did them. Whether you had the support of the environment, whether, it was a self-driven, the constant reminder that you yourself are capable and are the sole and core driver of the things you've achieved.
I love that. Phumeza, we need to take a break. Stay on the line and we'll continue this becoming conversation after the break.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
6 decades strong, Channel Africa continues to inspire Africa and the world, proudly sharing
the African perspective.
We are having today's becoming conversation with Phumeza Mxaku. I could call her a planning and strategy executive, but in light of the conversation that we're having today, I think I'll just call her Phumeza Mxaku, as herself, trying to become herself and constantly becoming herself as well. Phumeza, let's continue the conversation. Over the past couple of months, as you've been taking this journey of stepping away from your corporate roles and stepping into whatever, is up ahead for you. In this period, what have you learned about yourself?
Again, I'll probably reiterate the previous statements. I've learned that I'm innately capable. That I'm actually my best self, the best version of myself, where I have got a better balance of my work and personal spaces, the work-life balance, so to speak, right? A better, healthier, more grounded, more centered version of me is capable of being the best version of me. Right. And that I have all these capabilities, all of these things that I've achieved over the past 18 years were innately within me, right? Nurtured by self, by the environment, by the support of colleagues that I've worked with, stakeholders I have managed, etc. But that it was innately there and that I am always capable. And that it is important to do this step away, to reflect, to recharge, because any step forward requires me to be my most centered, my most mentally healthiest self.
Look, this conversation obviously isn't about encouraging people to quit their jobs today and go and pursue something else. It's more about your personal journey and why you've decided to do so. But it's also a reflection of what's happening in society right now, because you're not the only one taking a decision like this. How do you think this taking time to pause for whatever reason the individual is doing so, can impact personal growth and well-being?
I think immensely. What happens often when you are, I'll call it the word that is perhaps not popular, a corporate animal.
Yes.
When you are, a person who's distinctly driven, ambitious, a high performer, etc., you so often compromise, because there are 24 hours in the day, right? You so often compromise your personal side. And you find what you deem a reasonable balance. No, I'm still showing up. I'm still doing this for my family. I'm still showing up in some version. But the reality is, even when you think you are, you're not as fully present, right?
Yeah.
And so then when you've taken a step back, you're able to look at this so broadly, at this balance that you thought you had, and coming to the realization that oof, it wasn't quite it wasn't quite what I thought I had.
Yeah.
But you're now more present. You are now able to identify, oh, I can do better in that section of my personal life. I can be more present in that way. And I think for me, what has been important in this space is that even if I was to go back in a similar let's say, career space, whether independent or otherwise, but with similar pressure, let me say, I'm now cognizant of the parts of my personal spaces that I perhaps neglected somewhat in the past, and how to now show up in them and how to be intentional. I think what's important also about this time is the affirmation of intentionality. How to be intentional and how to structure your intentionality for yourself and for those around you.
So, what have you been doing with your 24 hours now? I think that's so interesting. And I think, tell me about the first few months after you left your role. And now, I think, a couple of months later, what have you been doing with your 24 hours?
In that first month in particular, hey, I was very aggressive about me, doing me. I shut down communication channels. And, I informed those when I left the organization. I said, look, I'd like to cut communication for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
I want this time to be completely about myself, to be completely centered to me. I just want rest, very intentional, uninterrupted, even from a thought perspective, rest, right? So I spent a lot of time just waking up, sleeping in, waking up at whatever time, doing a breakfast outside, a little bit of self-pampering. I
Yeah.
also did a small getaway, like a holistic
Oh,
health
yeah.
getaway in that period. That was completely and entirely about me, the type of location where they encourage you to use very little of your digital devices and just, zone into self. So I did quite a bit of that. I wanted to be very intentional about centering my mental health, right?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
had said at the time, it will be very important when I step back into whatever thought process or approach for how my career looks like going forward, that I am in my most balanced, most centered sense of self, so that the decisions I do make are not pressured, are not in panic, but rather are more aligned with what I want to do going forward. I really want the next 20 or so years to be as best aligned as possible with what I'd envisaged I wanted to do with my career.
I love that. And so, in reflection of the journey that you're taking, and there's someone listening to this saying, wow, I would like to be brave enough to do this for myself as well. What advice would you give to someone who's also considering to step away?
I would say take time to think about what you want to do and why you want to do it. Ensure the decision is not impulsive, irrespective of what external circumstances you have around you, right? Ensure the decision is not impulsive. Explore what a break looks like. Explore what you will need in this break from a realistic, pragmatic perspective in terms of resources. And then understand how you are to then plan accordingly, right? If you need money, how are you going to get this money? Do you have savings already? Do you have channels that will ensure your financial security in that period, so that is not a concern for you? Because it's important also that when you take such a break, you don't feel pressured, or let me just secure the next thing, because you are not taking time to then recharge, to then sort of recalibrate and step away. You are now constantly worrying about the next thing.
Yeah.
So it's important to pre-plan it. right? So don't wake up tomorrow and go, okay, I'm leaving, that's it. I'll give it a name and call it a day, right? Really break down that, okay, I want to take, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, and this is what it will imply. This is what I can put in place in terms of resources, and then plan accordingly and have the conversations. The conversations, I think, are important to have soundboards. Right.
Absolutely.
People you can check with, people that you trust. I'm sure you have people that you trust in both your personal and your professional spaces that can give you, a second opinion about, do they think you have really considered this well, and you are not just making a decision for the sake of.
Thank you so much, Phumeza. All the best for your constant becoming as well, and of course, all the best for the next chapter in your life.
Thank you so much.
That is Phumeza Mxaku in today's Becoming feature. Let's move on and bring back Musibudi Makura for our latest sports.